train moves us down. BD rock the center, BD rock the center, BD rock the center. Rap antidote, CD blow, light-headed be the top line, the train moves us down.
Two weeks after the events of Interlagos, the Kumho FIA TCR World Tour and TCR South America fields join forces once again for rounds 9 and 10 of the 2024 season, this time at the tight and technical Autodromo Victor Borat Fabini circuit in El Pinar, located some 30 kilometres northeast of Uruguay's capital city, Montevideo. Following on from victory last time out in Interlagos, BRC Hyundai Squadra Corsa driver Norbert Michaelis was set to defend his first place in the standings heading into the weekend. The Hungarian driver 15 points ahead of GOAT Racing's Esteban Gurrieri, himself a winner in the first race in Brazil, firmly moving himself into the title fight in second position. That leading duo are closely followed by the Link & Co Cyan Racing teammates Ted Bjork and Jan Elishay, who came into the weekend 37 and 40 points behind Michaelis respectively. However, the man to beat will be local hero Santiago Urrutia in another Link & Co car, who last year set the pole position and dominated the first race in front of his home crowd. In TCR South America, Rafael Reis of the W2 Pro GP Cupra has taken the lead of the standings after Interlagos, by just a single point ahead of previous leader Juan Rosso for Palladini Racing in the Toyota Corolla. Pedro Cardozo of PMO Racing in the Peugeot 308 follows the pair with a gap of 16 points to race, with his teammate Rafael Suzuki, who clinched fourth thanks to a double victory in Brazil. Besides Urrutia, the patrol of local drivers is formed by Squadra Martino teammates Juan Manuel Casella and Enrique Maglione in the Honda Civic FL5 and FK7 cars respectively. They will be joined by Carlos Silva, who makes his debut in the championship at the wheel of the second Corolla run by Palladini Racing alongside Juan Rosso. With heavy rainfall again welcoming the teams and drivers on their arrival in Uruguay, much like the conditions that greeted the World Tour in 2023, all of the early running in El Pinar would be undertaken in heavily wet conditions, leaving a wealth of unanswered questions for the field heading into the all-important qualification sessions. Wet-free practice suggested a Link & Co benefit this weekend, with both sessions having seen a top 3 lockout for the Cyan Racing Link & Co cars, firstly headed by Marcin Qua and then home favourite Santiago Urrutia taking his turn atop the standings in FP2. Come qualification time, however, the drivers would find a significantly improved racing surface on which to ply their trade, with conditions still firmly in the tricky half of the dial, thanks in no small part to significantly low ambient and track temperatures. Finding grip and building confidence would prove to be at a premium in the two-part grid-deciding sessions. With a seemingly reduced advantage on a drier surface, the fight between Link & Co and their closest challengers in Uruguay, Hyundai, would prove to be a spectacular affair. As a tight Q2 draws to a close, the BRC Hyundai N Squadra Corsa team found much to celebrate following a challenging start to the weekend. All 3 cars secured starts on the front 2 rows of the grid for the opening race of the day. Bebu Girolami, always popular in this part of the world, would end qualifying with a fine 4th position for his troubles, with reigning champion teammate and current World Tour points leader Norbert Michaelis just 0.06 of a second further up the road in 3rd. For his part, Mikel Azcona in the remaining Hyundai Elantra N TCR put in a superb display of on-the-limit driving to break the timing beam with a 1 minute 20.6 second lap time, enough to put the 20-year-old Spanish driver on the front row of the grid. No one, however, would have the pace or tenacity to match the performance of Lynk & Co Racing, and in particular their French former world champion Yann Aleshay. Having identified this weekend as a critical point in their own championship challenge, Aleshay put together a sensational qualifying session in the 168 machine, dominating the session to take his second pole position of the year and the first driver to do so this season. Thankfully, dry weather continued into race day on Sunday. And for the opening round, it would be a strong start from the front row of the grid for pole position man Yann Aleshay in car number 168 Cyan Racing Lynk & Co. Further back down the field, Goat Racing Honda driver Marco Butti would immediately hit trouble, the Italian driver proving to be the most badly affected from a 4-wide incident involving Lynk & Co.'s Marcin Hua, Juan Manuel Casella and Norberto Fontana. That incident off the start, added to further drama around the opening lap, would see Cobra Racing Toyota Corolla driver Tiago Vivacqua come to blows with Fabio Casagrande and Guilherme Reichel, necessitating the need for an early safety car intervention and to close up the field once again. It wouldn't take long to get the field back to racing conditions once again, and on lap 5 of the 25 minutes plus 1 lap scheduled race distance, it would be Yann Aleshay who leads the field from the BRC Hyundai ENG quadricorsa pair of Mikkel Azcona and Norbert Michelis, with Azcona in very hot pursuit close behind. Azcona would certainly look to be the lighter on his toes of the two drivers during these opening exchanges, the Spaniard showing ample amounts of enthusiasm as he tries to make his own bid to find a way past the Lynk & Co of Aleshay ahead. Never one to allow much in the way of pressure to creep into his driving, Aleshay produced a solid defensive drive through the opening corners. Plenty of squabbling will be had throughout the pack during these opening exchanges, not least of which came from a very hard-charging Marcin Hua in the 155 Lynk & Co Cyan Racing. Having been relegated to a P15 start, Ma would have a combative opening race, seen here in battle with Mateus Rossi's Toyota Team Argentina for 10th position overall, whilst further back, a sideways Dusan Borkovic's adventures continue in his own charge through the field. Running down into turn 12, and Ted Bjork takes third from Norbert Michelis, with Urrutia hitting Girolamo, leading to an energetic squabble between the pair. An optimistic Esteban Gurrieri trying desperately to find some pace and get involved in what has proven to be a rare day-off form for the Honda squad. Back up front, and Mikkel Azcona continues in his battle with the race-leading Lynk & Co Cyan Racing of Yann Aleshay. Frenchman Aleshay, having rebuffed the attentions of the lead Hyundai driver throughout the opening laps, now begins to eke out the gap in metronomic fashion, edging a few tenths clear in the following tours as the potential performance advantage of the blue cars in Uruguay begins to bear fruit. Further back, teammate Bjork gaps the recently cleared Michelis, and Marcin Hua continues his recovery drive, now up to the back of the leading South American runners, headed by Juan Rosso from Pedro Cardozo's Persian behind. In a fight of their own for TCR South America Championship points, Juan Rosso and Cardozo look to play the strategic game at this stage in proceedings. While certainly not content to make it easy for Ma, both drivers stressed the desire to concentrate on their domestic results ahead of the overall race finish. Just ahead of that particular battle pack, Bebo Girolamo decides he's seen enough of the Honda FL5 of Gurrieri ahead, the Argentine driver launching a brave and very clean move down the inside into T12 for 6th position, leaving Gurrieri with no option but to follow in line against his compatriot. That leaves Yann Aleshay in the lead from a still determined Azcona behind, with Bjork somewhat detached in his own battle with Michelis for the bottom step of the podium, and Santiago Urrutia continuing his spirited drive, keeping a watching brief in 5th place, ahead of the newly position swapped Beppu Girolami and Esteban Gurrieri, 6th and 7th positions respectively for the BRC Hyundai N Squadra Corsa and GOAT Racing Honda teams. With all that going on ahead, Marcin Hua used the opportunity to clear through the Palladini Racing Toyota of Juan Rosso. Another insightful move from the Chinese driver. Ma continues his charge from 15th place on the grid as he moves well within the top 10, now into 8th position following the pass on the purple Toyota. With the drama quietening down, at least for the front 5, Elishay having put in some strong work to gap the Hyundai behind, all attention will be firmly placed on the charge of Ma and his endeavours to reach those all-important top 6 positions. Sadly, for the Chinese Lynk & Co Cyan Racing driver, that particular charge would be halted due to yet another safety car intervention. As the field goes slow, we look again at the Dusan Borkovic slide before attention turns to the reason for the latest delay. Norberto Fontana and Galid Osman coming to blows further down the pack. Fontana would make it back to pit lane, but no such luck for Brazilian driver Osman, the W2 Pro GP driver parking his car with damage to the front right suspension. Now bunched back together again and somewhat undoing all of the good work undertaken at the front of the pack by Jan Elishay and Mikkel Afkona during the main bulk of the race. The remaining drivers in the field for the final part of round 9 of the Kumho FIA TCR World Tour prepare to do battle in what looked set to become something of a grandstand finish. Norbert Michaelis, currently in 4th position, certainly senses opportunity in car 105, having been brought back into play for the podium, and as the lights turn green again and the field sweep over the start-finish line and back into action on this 1.9 mile Elpinar circuit, it was business as usual at the head of the pack. Further down the order, home hero Urrutia was doing a relatively quiet but somewhat effective job in front of his home fans, holding on to 5th position but clearly uncomfortable with the pace on display from those behind. Performing the role of a somewhat cork in the bottle to the chasing pack, Urrutia would be desperately keen to hold on to his position as the two Hyundais and even his teammate Marcin Hua climb all over the back of the Lynk & Co in their efforts to find a way through the Uruguayan driver. With Santiago appearing to lack access to the pace of those behind, the opportunity for someone to pull the pin and devise an attack became ever more likely as the minutes ticked by. Here we see Norbert Michaelis having to work very hard indeed to cover off the attentions of Marcin Hua, the Hungarian successfully keeping the Lynk & Co driver at bay, for now at least. Emboldened somewhat by both his own pace during the race and the fact he can finally see a teammate ahead, Ma launches his bid to clear the two formation flying Hyundais ahead. Looking every which way to find an opening into the now infamous hairpin, Ma's efforts would be initially frustrated as the two teammates do well to avoid contact with each other. The ensuing side-by-side action presents opportunities. Esteban Gurrieri buying into the fight and make it a 3-wide run over the timing line as Michaelis tries hard to hold on to both car and position. With cars seemingly occupying every space of inch of racing tarmac and then some, Michaelis would prove to be the most disadvantaged of those involved in battle. The Hungarian driver losing out not just to Ma, but also Gurrieri, driver of the GOAT Honda, dropping to 8th position. Absolutely no such issues for Jan Elishay, however. The Frenchman taking a lights-to-flag victory at the head of the field, some 0.6 of a second up on the chasing Mikkel Afkona behind. Marking a very good day indeed at the office for the team, Ted Bjork scores yet another podium in 3rd place, as Elishay, atop his Lynk & Co car, celebrates wildly with the team, having scored what he considers to be a very important victory in his bid to close up in the standings to current Kumho FIA TCR World Tour points leader Norbert Michaelis. Fourth place eventually fell to Michaelis, ahead of teammate Girolami in fifth, with Esteban Gurrieri taking home sixth and Santiago Urrutia having received a penalty for contact earlier in the race, classifying in a demoted seventh place finish. Pedro Cardozo would be eighth and the first South American driver home, taking maximum points for his championship ahead of Juan Rosso and Mateus Rossi, rounding out those top 10 finishers. Round 10 of the Kumho FIA TCR World Tour would be held in similar conditions to those of the previous race, albeit in slightly warmer ambient temperatures than that of the morning event from earlier in the day. With the reverse grid top 10 from Q2 on Saturday, Marcinkoil looked set to start from pole position, only for the Link & Co driver to find himself stranded once the formation lap got underway. Good work from the marshals on site ensured Mars' car would be clear of the grid once the field rolled back round for the race start, effectively placing Pedro Cardozo at the head of the pack for the upcoming 30-minute race. Now minus the pole-sitting Mar. Unfortunately, the dramas were not to end there. Confusion reigned once the action got underway, thanks to a technical issue on the starting lights gantry, erroneously calling the aborted start and leaving several drivers in a state of perplexion as cars accelerated or slowed depending on their understanding of the light situation. With a significantly mixed up start, the race organisers found themselves with absolutely no choice but to call a halt to proceedings as the red flag waved and restart proceedings began in earnest. A lengthy delay would follow before finally resuming the full race distance, but this time under the rolling start procedure behind the pack leading safety car. A temporary reprieve then for Marcinkoil, now able to rejoin the race, but all the way down in 25th position. It would be Pedro Cardozo who leads the field away under the restart procedure. The Brazilian Peugeot driver working hard to keep the Volcano Motorsports Audi of John Philippi at bay through those difficult and high-speed opening turns. Further back in the pack, and perhaps still smarting from his race one penalty, Urrutia comes to blow with Gurrieri into the chicane, sending the Honda on a wild ride that Gurrieri does well to gather up as he rejoined down in sixth, just behind Nestor Girolami, who leads the Hyundai charge at this early stage of proceedings. At the front, Philippi continues to apply pressure to race leader Cardozo as several straps lower down the order during the opening skirmishes continue on unabated. Here we see the still recovering Esteban Gurrieri trying to keep the attentions of Michaelis and Azcona at bay. A great fight developing between these three drivers, all looking to make rapid progress from their reverse grid starting positions. As the field full of 25 TCR cars make their way around the lap, several fights throughout the field begin to develop for the minor placings. But the real action can be found at the head of the pack, as Philippi, keen to hang on to the front, has to deploy some rather dramatic tyre warming cum defensive driving tactics to hold off Urrutia, whilst further back, Dusan Borkovic puts on a masterful display of overtaking around the outside of the Honda driven by Rodrigo Baptista. Up front then, and Pedro Cardozo continues to make hay while the going is good, as first Santiago Urrutia, then Ted Bjork and Girolami continue to hound Philippi in second. Lights ablaze, the Volcano Motorsports Audi RS3 LMS TCR is certainly under pressure in these frantic opening few exchanges of the race. Having failed to make the start for round 9 earlier in the day, these first exploratory laps on a now fully dry racing surface are proving to be somewhat challenging for John Philippi, the Frenchman working early wonders behind the wheel to keep cars at bay that are clearly significantly faster should they find a way past the robustly driven Spanish-entered machine. Another view of the Gurrieri incident makes for no less unpleasant viewing, as Pedro Cardozo, gap in hand, continues his own personal fight with a stopwatch to extend his lead from the warring Philippi and Urrutia behind. The Uruguayan driver, seen here making an aggressive attempt to wrestle away second from the orange Audi ahead. That particular move puts Urrutia into the firing line of Bjork and Girolami behind, as clever car placement and a strong exit are just about enough to allow Filippi to retain his second position from the dramatically three-wide gaggle of rivals behind, now headed by Ted Bjork, as the Swedish star sneaks through in a decisive move on Urrutia for third position. Bjork wastes little time in attaching himself to the rear of the Audi, whilst further back, Marco Butti works hard to make up for race one, seen here on a charge, drag racing Athcona out to the final turn. Bravery is one thing, track space is quite another, and it's somewhat inevitable that Butti would quickly find himself in strife. Contact between the two leading the Italian off track in a wild ride that puts pay to any real opportunity of further progress through the running order for the GOAT Racing Honda driver. Thanks in no small part to the continued hard defence from Gianfilippi, the gap to the front two is substantial. Ted Bjork showing sensational pace to close down the gap and, as seen here, eventually passing Cardozo for a well-deserved race lead. Telegraphing the move early and experiencing little resistance to the move, Bjork filters to the head of the pack, whilst further back, Urrutia, still on the charge, again tries and again fails to navigate his way through Gianfilippi, as the three Hyundai Elantra N TCRs all occupy the same piece of real estate in 6th, 7th and 8th positions. Go time for Urrutia then, as he finally manages to pass a rapidly fading Gianfilippi. Dusan Borkovic and Marcin Hua, plus the two Hyundais, also take advantage as the inevitable floodgates begin to open and the Volcano Motorsport driver falls to an eventual 9th position at the checkered flag. A brave and impressive drive, regardless of the final result. Up front, and Pedro Cardozo gamely shadows Bjork in his PMO Racing Peugeot 308 TCR. Now free of traffic and with something of a point to prove in front of his home crowd, Santiago Urrutia gives his absolute all to close down the gap to the leading duo. A succession of personal fastest laps go the way of the Uruguayan driver in his bid to catch Cardozo, but with so little time left to run, the charge would unfortunately go unrewarded come the checkered flag. Even more so when a post-race disqualification takes Urrutia out of the final classifications altogether, promoting Esteban Guerrieri and GOAT Racing into his third place finish on track. Disappointment would also befall Matheus Rossi on the final lap, with another did not finish result for the Argentine driver, as up front Ted Bjork continues on his merry way to a second victory of the 2024 Kumho FIA TCR World Tour season, capping off what has been a rich run of form that has seen the former world champion notch up 2 wins and a further 2 podium positions in the last 3 rounds of the season. With that performance, Bjork has drastically improved his own World Tour points position, moving the 43-year-old into third in the overall point standings, 29 points adrift of Michaelis, but more importantly, now the lead charge from the Lincoln Co Cyan Racing team following another disappointing pit lane visiting race for teammate Elishay in this second and final event of the weekend here in Uruguay. A great result for Bjork and his Cyan Racing team, and a sensational result for Pedro Cardozo to hold on to second overall and first in TCR South America. An excellent weekend of racing at the Autodromo Victor Borat Fabini Circuit El Pinar. High intensity action, overtakes and drama, and we're back again in the Kumho FIA TCR World Tour on the weekend of 19th of October. Next up is China.